to the presentation. Do you want to show something on the laptop now?
Yeah, just because are we not going to have these things?
No, the presentation, well, the internet we'll get from Ria's presentation, the presentation, so they're preloaded on the back. We couldn't run them off there for reasons which are unclear.
Right, how are we doing on time front?
11:18?
3 minutes in?
A couple more people running?
I think I might as well.
Yeah.
Kick off. So hang on, I've instantly forgotten the order.
Yeah. We swap places. No, it's fine. No, is that going to make it easier for you, Tom?
It really would, yeah. But you can see I
Get to swap the name things.
I think that's probably a clue to start. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming to this session on everything about parliaments and parliamentary data and transparency and openness and monitoring. My name is Tom Steinberg. I'm the director of mySociety. I'm the chair today. My main role is simply to introduce these people, but I think the one thing I will say, abusing chair's privilege first, is that it is extraordinarily important that we use data to keep track of parliaments, because yesterday I watched our Prime Minister give a speech here to all of you about how important openness was to him. And speeches are a really important thing that politicians do, and so are votes. Votes are also really important things that politicians do. So how would we go and find today or 10 years ago or 10 years in the future, how would we find whether the words that this one politician said are the same as the votes? How would you do that? And ultimately, you will never be able to do that if there isn't data that comes out of parliaments, and if there aren't people and organizations who will process that data and turn it into things that are meaningful. And so I went and I checked this morning on a website that my organization runs, and I see, as I look at the things that David Cameron voted on, I see that he's strongly for some things. And I look through to what's his view on transparent parliaments? Not his view, what's his votes on transparent parliament? And it tells me, interestingly, that despite his speech yesterday, he's voted both for and against different measures of making Parliament more transparent. And that is just an amusing example, because we are all citizens. We need, even in any context in our home lives and our work lives, we need to be able to judge the actions of politicians and understand what's going on. Even as professionals at this venue, we need to know that so we can make good decisions. And that would only be possible in this country right now because a group of people took data out of a parliamentary system and processed it and used it so that the public could understand such things. And we're about to hear a series of stories about that sort of thing from inside and outside of Parliament. And so I'm going to kick off by, I will just present very briefly absolutely everybody. My colleague here, Paul Lenz, who is from mySociety. Maria Baron from Argentina, let me get it right, Fundación Directo Legislativo. Sorry, not great at Spanish. Stephen Abbott from the British Parliament itself, and Matthew Landauer from Open Australia, an NGO in Australia. And that is enough for me. I will move on to the real presentations. Paul.
Thank you, Tom. So my name is Paul Lenz. I'm Head of International Projects for mySociety. I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the things that we do and why we think that making parliamentary information open and accessible is just hugely, hugely important. So we do a lot of things. Even though we're a UK-based organisation that's been around for 10 years, we also work with partners to run sites of parliamentary monitoring in lots of different countries. Here's one that we run in Kenya called Mzalendo that has a vast amount of information about members of the Parliament and the Senate in Kenya. It has the transcripts, so you can see what people have said and done in Parliament. And this is a site that also, in the elections earlier this year, had all of the information about the candidates from local council all the way up to president in a form that was really easy for people to find so they could know who they should be potentially voting for. And that's just one really small example of why making that data available is so important. In Kenya, whilst I'd be the first to know that there were some issues around the election process and data, one thing the Electoral Commission did was they made the data of candidates available on the internet via a thing called an API that made it really, really easy for sites like ours to suck that information out. We don't have that in the UK. That's an example where Kenya had better technology and made data more readily available than we have in the UK. And that means, if you're a politician or a citizen, a very important thing. It means if you're a politician, people know that you're standing. They know that you can be voted for, which is probably the single most important thing if you want to get elected. And as a citizen, you actually know who the people standing in your constituency are readily and easily. This is a site that we're working on at the moment in South Africa with the Parliamentary Monitoring Group. It's not live yet, but I just want to give you a little sneak preview of it. It's taking a similar principle, and it's having information about members of Parliament in South Africa. And again, you can see there on the screen, these are instances of where the Member of Parliament has spoken, and that information, which previously has been really hard to find. You have to basically search through dozens and dozens of PDF files to find when this politician spoke. It's now going to be very, very simple and easy for people to find. This is a site in Ghana where a great organization called Hutspace basically took the code that we built, because it's free and there on the internet for anyone to use. They took it and built their own version of one of those sites in Ghana. Again, the same principle, but we had very little to do with it. They took it and they did all the hard work, and it's a great site. We do other things. We don't just do parliamentary monitoring. This is a site to make it very easy to raise a Freedom of Information request in the UK. And as you'll see, over 181,000 times this has been done on the site. So if you want to find out how a contract was awarded, you want to find out payments were made, then you can ask this of up to 15,000 different parts of government and local government. And the great thing about this site is, not only has it been used incredibly, 180,000 times, that every single request is on average viewed by another 20 people. So people have been asking these questions of government, and then other people have been Googling with the same question, and they've come and they've gone to the site and they've found the answers. Just one kind of final site that we do, which is seemingly unrelated to any of this stuff about open information, open data. It's a site called Fix My Street. We run it in the UK. We've also got a version running it in Switzerland. There's a version in Norway and other places around the world. And it basically means that you can do stuff like get a pothole fixed incredibly easily. So you're walking down the street, there's a pothole there. Before a site like Fix My Street, it'd be really hard to find out which bit of government was responsible for that little bit of road and fixing it. We've done the hard technology part of mapping bits of government to roads to make it very easy to report potholes and streetlights and a whole host of other things. And as you'll see on there, 360,000 times people have reported issues on Fix My Street. It's a great way of getting citizens engaged and realizing that government isn't just this big thing that sits there and does things to them. It's something that they can actually reach out and touch and have impact upon. And you know what? It makes them value government that much more. So that's a very quick tour of some of the stuff that we do. But I wanted to talk more specifically about opening up parliamentary information, making it easy for people to find out how their politicians have voted, as Tom was mentioning earlier, what they've said, what job experience they have. That might seem like the most obvious information in the world, but it's actually terrifying how in many countries you can't find out this basic information. It might be there buried away on a government website, but it's often in a document that's hard to read or hard to search, and you've got to be really motivated to find that information. Why would you care as a citizen? Because you want to know if politicians are doing what they said they were going to do. You want to know what they said. In many cases, you may not even know who they are, and you want to find an easy way of actually identifying who the person who represents you is, so that you can see if they're representing your views. You can go to them with issues. That's a very basic right, and when we talk about the Open Government Partnership and we talk about the things that are important, I think that fundamental core of information about who your representatives are should be front and centre in every single commitment that's made. Hopefully it's relatively easy to see why it's a good idea for citizens to make this information available. But a lot of the people in this room, they're citizens, but they're also parliamentarians. They're elected representatives. And they might be sitting there thinking, well, what's in it for me to have all this information out there? Why would I want people to know that I used to work for IBM? Surely it's not great, and I shouldn't have to put a lot of effort into making this information available. And for me, the simple answer is this. If you do a survey of distrusted professions, you will get journalists and you will get politicians up there. When people hear about the activity of politicians, the stories are normally about sex scandals and corruption scandals and expenses scandals, a whole host of other things. The view that public has of many politicians is, unfortunately, they don't work very hard. They don't do very much, and they're in it for their own self-interest, because that's all they see, and that's what's portrayed in the media, unfortunately, most of the time. But I know the reality is different. Even though I work from a scrappy NGO that sits outside government, I know that most politicians are incredibly hardworking, incredibly dedicated, and incredibly passionate about what they do. But the citizens don't see that. They don't see that because they don't see the fact that they've gone to 100 votes in the last 3 months, that they've done 10 speeches in Parliament, that actually they're not just someone who has walked into politics, they've had a career in the business world, which means they understand the issues and they care about them and they're credible. And so my appeal to the people in this room who are parliamentarians and work for parliaments and work for governments and are elected representatives is that you really need to get this information out there, not just because it's good for the citizens, but because it makes people appreciate and understand the genuine work of parliaments. It's going to make you ultimately more respected. And I just think that's so important that we can't not focus on it. That's my hopefully very quick overview from mySociety, and I might like to hand over to Maria. So magically it should switch to the internet. Tom has changed the screen.
Oh, so I have to.
Sorry.
Okay, so I am Maria Barona. I'm from Argentina. I work for an organization called Directorio Legislativo, sorry. And I am the coordinator of a network called the Legislative Network for Legislative Transparency. And so I'm not going to talk about the information that the Congresses put out for the people to see or to use. I'm going to talk about the information that the organizations put together so that people know what is happening in Congress and who represents them. And being from a network, this network has 20 members from 10 different countries in Latin America. So that gives us a sort of strength that we wouldn't have if we were individual organizations in each of our countries. So the things or the initiatives that I'm going to show you are backed by 20 organizations that push for that website, or in this case, or that initiative to go forward and to be more effective in our congresses. Not only that, but also, working as a network, maybe many of you are members of networks, but in this case, this one gives us a voice that before the network was created, we didn't have, and it gives us the opportunity to shape, in a way, the debate about opening parliaments in the world. And so now, maybe as opposed to before, the benchmarks or the opening parliaments declaration that is out there has the view, or it reflects what is happening in Latin America. Before, we had in the 90s and in the first 10 years of the years 2000, we had the benchmarks. Many of you probably know them. They didn't reflect exactly what the presidential systems in Latin America, the situations that we had in our congresses, in our presidential systems. Now, the products that are out there that help us, the organizations, to go to Congress and try to advocate for opening or for more transparency, help us, and those products are used. We are full of toolkits in many issues and in many issues that are not used. These ones that are about opening parliaments are really used. There are many. We have the Declaration of Legislative Transparency. We have the index that we have elaborated in Latin America to be able to measure the level of transparency in each of our congresses. And so just to back that, I'm going to show you a couple of websites. I have many, so if the time constraints don't allow me, just cut me and I'll cut. So the first one is one of Argentina. This is a website that went up about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's about asset declarations, and it was elaborated by 3 organizations of our network, and it's about financial statements from the executive, from the legislative, and also about judges. And the 3 organizations made an agreement with a very leading newspaper in Argentina, and the newspaper created the platform. And so the first day it was out, it had 100,000 visits. So just to show you an example, we can go to the legislative branch. And then you can, I'm going to go here, just to show you one example. This is a member of Congress, and you can see here the years of the available declarations that you have. I'm going to punch in 2011, which is the last one. And so now you can see, you can see the properties that the person has. These are buildings or departments. These are houses. These are countryside lots. And these are here the properties that are shared with someone else. He only has a percentage of that property. And you go down, and you can see the cars. You can see, oops. You can see the money that he has in bank accounts, and you can click on each, and you can see the details. Then you can go to see how much he makes a month. Down here, this is it. And if he has other income or not, this is if he has debts, or if he has acreencias, I don't know, people that owe money to him. These are bonds and stocks. And then these are the debts. And down here are all the icons possible for properties and stuff that people have. And if you go up, you can see here, you can see the original document, which was presented by the member of Congress, which we had to scan. All the documents we had to scan, and all the documents were given to us in a paper format. So we had to punch all this information to an Excel and then create the platform. This is the original document. We have put in black the numbers that are like for the number of the passport or document of the person, and then some addresses as well. Oh, never mind. Then you can go to the open format. You can download it in XML, JSON, or CSV right here. Or you can go to our website, which is this one, and you can see who the person is. And all this information, this one is our organization's website, and this is all information that we have produced. It's not information that we've scraped. Every year we ask each of the members of Congress to give us information about themselves, and they have to fill it in handwriting, and then we have to punch it in, and we publish a book every 2 years, every time we have elections, and then we publish it in this website. And this is the person that we're talking about, that we saw the assets. And then one more thing. And you have this about on members of Congress. You have them on the executive, public officials of the executive, and judges. And something else. And then here you can see the other, on the right-hand side, you can see the other declarations of the other years that he was member of Congress. Okay, so I'm going to show you another website of an organization called Congreso Visible. The organization is from Colombia, and they also done an agreement with a local newspaper called El Espectador, and so you go into their URL as elespectador.com, and you can see in the political section, and you can see this widget on the right-hand side of Congreso Visible, where you can access to all the information about Congress members and also initiatives. And so you can click and find, you can see Vargas. And you can see all the initiatives that this person has. This is a representative called Vargas, whatever, in Colombia. You can see the initiative that the person has introduced. And now it goes to like a sort of summary of what the initiative is. And you can punch here. And you can see, well, never mind. It's a pop-up of who the person is and how the person voted either for with the party he represents or if he voted separately in a different way. And so you can see here on the right-hand side of that table, you can see all the other authors of that initiative. So you can go to any of those and you can see the same thing. And then you can, well, I don't see it now, but you can, here. And then you can see the bio of the person, you can see the legislative activity, all the initiatives that the person only has introduced, and then you can see some of the votes. And then if you go to the initiative here, you can, I can do it now. But if you go to the initiative, it tells you where across the legislative timeline where the initiative is. And so you know if it's going to be passed in a short time or if it's just been introduced and what the debate was regarding that initiative. So this is Colombia. Now I'm going to show you another website of a Chilean organization called Ciudadano Inteligente, and they've developed this interesting website called Inspector de Intereses. It's kind of like an inspector, an interest inspector, referring to the interests of the companies that the members of Congress have, and they compare that to the votes that they've voted in Congress, and to see if there's any incompatibility or not. And so we're going to see Araya. Just to one.
Can you talk through what you're doing for people who can't see?
Oh, you can't see it? Okay, I'm going to check this person. This is Congressman Bustos, and it shows you that he doesn't have any incompatibility. They have done the check of the votes and the check of the companies the person owns, and there's no problem with that. He didn't vote regarding the companies that he owns. This person, Sergio Aguilo Melo, apparently has a suspicion of an incompatibility or regarding a company that he may own. And so we can see down here what it is, where he voted, in what issue he voted. These are the two initiatives that he's introduced. And so this lamp shows you that there might be an incompatibility or not. We can go to that. And it shows you that it has been in a company and not in a stock or bond that he owns. And it says that he has effectively declared that he owns that company, but still there is a suspicion that he has voted maybe for him. This is Chile Inspector de Intereses. And so lastly, we have Curul 501, Curul 501. Curul is the seat in Congress in Mexico, and this is a Mexican website created by Fundar, an organization in Mexico. And what they've done is they've chosen a couple of issues that they want to follow and see what people think about what the debate is in their Congress. So you can go to curul501.org and you can punch in, this is the most viewed initiative, you can punch in here and you can see what people think about it through comments, and also they can vote for or against the initiative. This is for, the green one, and the pink one is against, and then you can comment. And you can comment and you can see all the comments here, for or against. So maybe I'll stop there and the word to you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Right. And now we have Stephen Abbott from Parliament. This Parliament, the one just down the road.
Hi everyone, my name's Stephen Abbott. I'm the head of digital projects at Parliament in the UK. My team organises how information is given out to the public, so mainly through Parliament's website, which is parliament.uk, and some of the other systems that we use there. What I want to talk about today builds on some of the things that people have already mentioned, which is that if parliaments don't start from a position of being open about their information, about their data, other people will find other ways to show that information, and people will come to trust these other sites rather than trusting you as a parliament. So why wouldn't you want that information to come from you in the first place? And some good examples in the UK of, say, I know Paul alluded to this, but the Public Whip is the main site that we have in the UK that shows people very clearly how an MP has voted. The creator of that is in the audience today. But there's something to learn from that. We have that information. We had it all along. The fact that that information can be pulled out is taken from Parliament, but we didn't look at ourselves and go, how can we make this information more available to the public, more easy to use? From the position of Parliament at the moment is that we do publish a huge amount of information. The UK Parliament puts a huge amount of documents, transcripts, video, everything on our website. And you can see some of the list here. So we have the daily debates, we've got streaming video, we've got archive of clips on there, every report that's put in, biographies of all the people who are at Parliament or have ever been at Parliament. We've got their financial interests published, a huge amount of information. But in a lot of cases, we haven't, from the start, we haven't built in the kind of openness that a lot of other companies and a lot of other organisations would like, which is that we make that information freely available to be reused, to be published in other ways on other sites. So we get caught in the same loop that other people get caught in, which is that we only have one way to publish. So I'll give you some examples of, like, there's things where we try to do recently where we've tried to change the way that we publish things. Hansard is what we publish once a day, and for example, this is how we try and get transcripts up within 3 hours now, because we know there's a demand out in the public for there to be faster transcripts. So this is produced through the same team that do Hansard, and there are ways that if we use technology, we can be more open, we can be quicker, we can be more transparent about the information, but we have to have it in the right form at the start. The number one thing that people use Parliament's website for in this country is to find out about their MPs, or about the members of the House of Lords. We have pages for every single one of those people. We try and show as much information as possible on those pages. But again, what this comes back to is that if we have all that information in one system that we can openly offer to other people, then they can go off and they can build a system that shows how that person's voted or that puts the information together. And as long as it comes from Parliament, as long as Parliament can produce it and be open about how we pull that information together, then a lot of other people can build information off it. I'll give you an example here that on the right-hand side there are links there that are made possible because Parliament has invested in making APIs for our early day motions that are produced in this country, where MPs can propose a motion at Parliament. and also linking into the Hansard system that shows what people have voted on. But we have a huge amount of challenges at the moment. We've got a lot more people. We've got twice as many people this year than last year who tried to come to Parliament from a mobile phone or from a tablet device. And effectively what I was trying to say is that if we don't have the open devices in the first place to have all our information where other people can reuse it, then also Parliament can't reuse it. We can't reinvent a mobile site as easily as we would like to. We can't show different information to different places. We can't make sure that a member's picture is displayed every time they speak. But if we do build in that openness from the start, we can do it. And what you see here is just some of the challenges that I was thinking of that we've got at the moment, where we have a huge amount more people accessing parliamentary information on the move. There's the demand for people to know right away what's happened, what have people just voted on, what have people just said. And if we're not the source of that information, people are going to try and get it elsewhere, or they might not be able to get it from sources that should be as trusted. There's also the challenge of how we reshape services as we go, and something I've alluded to here, which is that 60% of all the people who come to Parliament's website come through Google, and just through searching for things on Google. So if we don't produce our information and we aren't open about it in the way that Google would best be able to find it, then they're not going to send as many people to us. We really need to keep up with these kind of trends. And also, there's an issue where we just don't know how we're going to look at things in the future. So Google's a company that's only been around 15 years or so, and that's now sending us 60% of our traffic. Who's going to be there in 15 years' time that we'll want to work with, and how are we going to be able to work with them if we haven't got all the information available to use for their purposes? What we do in this country for our parliamentary information is we have tried to experiment with this over the last few years by having hack days, where I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of where some teenagers who are all 15 and 16 and 17 this year took all the acts of Parliament that we've got on our site, and because the information was available there, they had to scrape all the information. They put it through a feed so that it squeezed down all the text so that someone could understand it, and they made a mobile app that anyone can use. It's called React. This is part of the Young Rewired State program. So if we had this information in a form that they could more easily use through the APIs that Paul was discussing, they'd be able to make this in half the time, a third of the time, and everyone would be able to make a myriad of different ways that they could make parliamentary information interesting to people in a way that we're not doing at the moment. Another example is this, which is the Toe the Line, which maybe we wouldn't have done officially at Parliament, but it's showing the most rebellious MPs. So it's taking information we've got, so what people voted on, what are their pictures, and how likely are they to vote on different things. And I know, for example, this one used information that Parliament has, but didn't have the information coming from us. It would be using Public Whip or They Work For You. So those sources of information become more trusted than Parliament, because they are the ones that are used in all these services. So I just wanted to advise people that I would really advocate this kind of openness approach, both for the usefulness for the public, but also for the parliaments themselves. It gives you more capability to reuse the information, and just so you know, the UK Parliament is working or doing a lot of work in this area. We're building a data platform at the moment that will make all of these data sets more available. We have some things that are available right now. So this is the members' names database we've got. So if you want any information about anyone who's ever been a member of the House of Commons or ever been a member of the House of Lords or is currently a member, you can come to Parliament and then you can produce that information from our system. So we hope that we'll be able to use systems like this to work more closely and better with people in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now Matthew Landauer, who has come literally as far as you possibly can from the land of forest fires in Australia. Tell us about your work.
Okay, so I'm Matthew Landauer from the Open Australia Foundation. I'm one of the co-founders. We build tools for citizens to connect them with their governments and their politicians and their communities, and basically give them the tools to affect the change that they want. We have a number of online projects which are kind of in a diverse set of areas. We have openaustralia.org, which was our very first project, which is basically republishing the Hansard, which is the official transcript. It allows people to find out what their politicians are doing and get in touch with them and things like that. And that's what I'll mostly be telling you about. We also have another one called Planning Alerts, which is about people finding out about what's happening in their local area, finding out when things are being built and knocked down, and they get email alerts and they can follow up with that. I'm also actually going to talk about that, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with parliaments. And the reason is because it illustrates a nice kind of model of how when citizens find out information and you give them the information that they're interested in, and you give them the means to follow up on it in a very simple and straightforward way, you can create a really good channel for citizens to feel engaged and empowered to do something. And I think there's still an enormous amount of room within opening up of parliamentary data in terms of giving people the tools to really act on that and become engaged in the process of drafting of legislation and things like that. So I'll just quickly mention our two other projects, Election Leaflets, which is basically a crowdsourcing project to collect election leaflets that people receive in the postbox when elections are going on, and it's a way to make that visible to everybody, to both give citizens more information before they go to vote, and also to make the possibility of kind of dodgy dealings with election leaflets less likely, because they're out in public, and anything that is slightly dubious will be visible to everybody, so that actually makes it a lot less likely to happen, which is a good thing. So Right to Know, which is a freedom of information request site, and it's basically the mySociety Abbott platform that we've adopted for Australia. So this is openaustralia.org, which allows you to find out about what your representatives are doing. And when we started this project in 2007, the parliamentary website was pretty basic. But the reason is because, well, since Australia was formed in 1901, we've had the blessing of having published transcripts of what's said in Parliament. And they're published in volumes like this. But the thing is, those really are not meaningful documents to ordinary people. They were the technology of the time to publish them in books. And when the Australian Parliament came to publish those things online, what they really did is exactly transcribe the notion of a document and put it online. Now, that was a fantastic thing at the time, but really the possibilities of when you put this kind of parliamentary information in electronic form, you have access to enormous different ways that you can do things. And now, so this is actually what the official parliamentary website looked like at the time when we started. And it was very, very dry. And really the only people that ever looked at that stuff were either people who worked within Parliament or absolute sort of political insiders. Definitely not normal people. So the idea is how do you, now the question is, do I have a missing slide? Yes, okay, all right. How do you turn this dry document into something that's meaningful, a living, breathing thing? And the truth is that the vast majority of people are interested in something specific, and they want to find out about something specific. And if you give them tools, for instance, to, let's say they're interested in open government, and if they can put in that open government search term and put in their email address, and anytime anyone says open government in Parliament, they get an email alert, then you have to trawl through the transcript. It basically comes to them. And that's the first step of making something meaningful and accessible to ordinary people, is that you don't assume that they're crazy political nuts. You assume that they're normal people who have jobs, who have lives, but they're still interested and they want to find out about something when it's relevant to them. So that's a really key thing. Another thing is lots of people in Australia don't know who their representatives are. So the simple thing of saying, okay, this is where I live, and it telling you who your representative is very powerful. And that becomes possible when you rethink these transcripts as living, breathing things. So a number of other things become possible. You can find out, you get summary information about what individual politicians are doing. We collect contact details, biography information, also lists of recent things that they've said, and in a similar way, we also collect some stats just based on how many times they've spoken in Parliament, other slightly silly things, but things like the number of people that follow the debates and stuff like that. Now I want to tell you about planning alerts, which is our site focused on people finding out about development applications, which are applications that people and developers put in when they want to build or knock something down. And here, so what you do is you basically put in your street address, and you put in your email address, and when anything happens within a certain radius of of the address that you've put in, you get an email alert. And that email shows, okay, something's happened here. This is the most recent one that I received where I live, saying that there's a roller derby happening down the street, and they were applying for a temporary liquor license. So I can then click on that link and find out more stuff about it, and even respond to things. This is another one, just to show you an example. This is someone who was wanting to alter the front of the house, including demolition of enclosed balcony and front-facing and restoration of Victorian-style facade. Now, what you can do as well, as soon as you look at that page that shows the development application, is you can actually directly go in and comment on it. And here you can see someone's put in a comment saying that they think it's a great idea that they're doing this. Now, and that comment is instantly visible on that page. And anybody who's subscribed for email alerts within that radius also gets another alert saying, oh, someone's made a comment. But the really, really powerful thing is that underneath the hood, actually what happens is an email is also sent off to the local council. And that email, that comment, then becomes part of the official planning process, right? And the idea here is that the idea of this project is actually to get people doing something that's political, doing something that's involving their community, responding to something who would never, ever normally consider doing something political, right? So it's about making the barrier of entry really low and sort of almost kind of teasing someone into doing something small and simple and saying, yes, I want this to happen, no, I don't want this to happen. And perhaps this is an interesting model of where legislative processes might go in the future, or even where the process of watching what's happening on in Parliament. If you give people the tools to actually act on it, then you're in a really interesting place. That's just showing you how you can fill out a comment. I think that's it. Yes. All right, cool, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I want to open it up for questions, but while you think of your question and put your hand up, I'm going to pose a first question myself to everybody on the panel here, which is, what is the information or the service that you offer at the moment that is most popular with your users, the thing that people really, really appreciate or want most urgently? And meanwhile, please, if you've got a question, please raise your hand. So, okay, why don't we go this way? So,
in terms of our parliamentary transparency website, I would say that there's an incredible long tail of things that people are interested in. We get an enormous amount of our traffic through Google. So this is people looking for all sorts of weird and wonderful things and basically discovering people in Parliament talking about things and then reading these discussions that they would never, ever normally come across. Aside from that, it's the actual individual profile pages of the politicians?
For Parliament in the UK, it's mainly people are finding out information about the building. We're obviously a big centre that people come to visit, so a lot of people are looking for information about Big Ben and things like that. But the main kind of parliamentary information that we produce, that people use, is our Find Your MP service, where you can just put in your postcode and you can find out who your local representative is, because we know there's a huge amount of people who don't know who their local MP is, don't know how to contact them, so that's the main service that people use on our site.
I would have to say I represent many organizations, but I'm going to talk about mine. The asset declaration website is the most visited, of course, with many, many visits a day. And we've also made an agreement with them so as they tag each member of Congress whenever any news named them. And so now, after 2 weeks or less than they've done that, we have a lot of visits in our website too. You tag, Maria Barón MP, and you click and you go to our website. And the first day it went down with all the visits because it wasn't prepared for all that load of clicks. And so we upgraded it a bit, and so those two, I would say, the asset declaration through the newspaper and our website to get to know who the members are. And regarding the other organizations in the network, I would say the organizations that have agreements with newspapers. Those are the most visited.
I think for us, in terms of a site that people actually do a transaction on and get something out of, then it's actually a site I didn't show you called Write to Them, which makes it really, really easy for people to write to their elected representative. And again, to Matthew's point, they don't even need to know who the person is. They put in their address and it says, this is your local councillor, this is your member of parliament, click who you want to write to, fill in the box, press go, and we will automatically route it there. And over 100,000 people a year send messages to their politicians using that site in the UK.
Thank you. There's a wonderful pattern there of how sometimes what we don't think of as parliamentary information, so not bills, not laws, not votes, but simply who is my politician, actually turns out to be the thing that's really important, and you need quite different skills to make technology for bills and different skills for the public who don't know who their politicians are, and that was very interesting cross-section. Right, so we got absolutely tons of hands. I'm going to take three at a time. The very first was the lady in the white at the back, then there was a lady here somewhere with brown hair, and then I'm going to pick you, sir, there, and then we'll try again. So 1, 2, 3. So can we take actually three at a time and then for speed? So, right. Okay.
Hi, my name's Fran Perrin. I'm the founder and director of the Indigo Trust. My question to all of you is: what are the biggest barriers to you doing more of this work? Is it about funding? Is it about capacity? Or if you're inside Parliament, is it just about getting permission?
And then the lady here in the front.
Hi, I'm Natalia Carfi from Buenos Aires City Legislature in Argentina. So I just wanted to ask two questions, one from my partner from Parliament. If it's been hard from within getting not only the political okay to do the opening up of legislative information, or has it been hard with the people working within the parliaments, like the civil servants? Because that's been a challenge for me. And I wanted to ask Opening Australia Foundation if they've done any institutional commitments with the parliament so that they can give you more information to increase the amount of information that it's in your website. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the third one was the gentleman here.
It's almost a comment rather than question, and I think this wonderful presentations highlight the importance of this legislative openness. I'm running an institute which do parliamentary monitoring in Jordan in the last 4 or 5 years, and most of these techniques, we adapted it before. When we start really monitoring parliament and releasing the information about the parliament and transforming the data in the parliament to usable information. But the problem was the lack of resources, the lack of information about the parliament itself. There is no openness. It was almost, 2 years ago, it was almost impossible to know the attendance list of MPs or to know who vote for what in the parliament. Therefore, I think this is a great opportunity for us who came from emerging democracies, if I may say, or developing countries, to use these OGP tools to enhance parliament opening. Otherwise, we couldn't really reach these standards of service providing that those presentations highlights. Thank you for your presentations.
Okay, thank you for those questions and points. Matthew, would you like to start? You've got a direct question.
In terms of the limiting factor, I would say money is definitely pretty much up there. We're absolutely minuscule. I mean, there's basically two sort of full-time people, and then a bunch of volunteers. You would think in a very rich country like Australia that it wouldn't be hard to get funding for the type of work that we do, but strangely enough, that's not the case. In terms of access to the data, I obviously showed you the positive side in terms of what data we do have. But for instance, in the case of planning alerts, I didn't show you the enormous amount of effort that's actually involved in getting that information. So there's a lot of technical difficulty under the hood. That information is not provided in any kind of machine-readable, useful way, standardized way, or anything anywhere. We basically scrape websites. And initially, we scraped, with the parliamentary stuff, we scraped everything. And then the Parliament basically changed their website and it broke everything. And basically we were like, everything's gone away and we couldn't do anything. So they actually, bless them, they actually gave us access then to the underlying kind of data that's used in their publishing system. So we've been using that since then. That's made things a lot better, but there are still a lot of problems. They're very lacking in technical skills themselves, so whenever we find things wrong, and we find things wrong and problems all the time, they have a lot of difficulty dealing with them. Now, second question. Remind me.
It was simply, have you done active collaboration?
Oh, yes, of course. So we have at different stages we've had a certain amount of dialogue with the people that run the Hansard publishing systems, but again the major obstacle has been that they really don't have the in-house technical skills. So they've had some fantastic proponents of opening up their data. For instance, the former parliamentary librarian was a massive proponent of the work that we were doing and was also pushed incredibly hard for all the data that's on the official parliamentary website to be under a Creative Commons license, and that happened. So that was a gigantic win. But in terms of the practicality of actually getting access to the information, very little has changed in 5 years.
And for the rest of you, the other question was about essentially barriers. What stops you from being as completely awesome as you would like to be?
I think to answer the question from the lady at the Indigo Trust, I think what happened initially would have been I think maybe the culture of the Parliament hadn't caught up with the technology, and now what's happened is that the technology's overtaken Parliament. So we have an issue where a lot of the members of Parliament are pressuring us to produce information in a certain way. So I think at the start it would have been a cultural, not clash, but it would have been people who are used to things being a certain way, being told that things should be done using a different technology that they weren't very familiar with for certain reasons. And over the last few years, we've just seen the pattern that now those same people are the ones who are clamouring the most to have that information, to be able to republish it on their own websites to be able to show members of the public who are demanding information from them, their members, so they can reuse it. So that's been an interesting change. And to the second question, from Parliament's point of view, we are trying to work with a lot more people. So we're working with mySociety at the moment, and it's very interesting. There's always kind of interesting. It's more interesting to go and speak to people who complain about you and disagree with you than it is to end up talking about them. But there's still a big question of how Parliament does the best thing for everyone that can be used by companies as well as by Parliament.
And Maria and Paul?
About the constraints, I don't know, I'm going to cry. There's so many, we can talk for hours. But funding, obviously, especially Latin America, we get less funding every year. For the past 10 years, every year we get less. Especially the Southern Cone, we get pretty nothing or very little. And so we've managed to do, we always say, if you want us to change the world, we need money. But it hasn't stopped us to develop all these things. Of course, there are countries that have more funds, the traditional ones that get money, Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, whatever, Guatemala. We generally don't get much in the Southern Cone, but still, we work a lot with volunteers. We're, compared to organizations in other continents, we're bigger. We have more people, and that helps us. We work a lot with volunteers. The work with the asset declaration was done year after year for 12 years with volunteers. And as well, Ciudad Inteligente from Chile, they developed that website with volunteers that were data entry people, with all the problems that brings as well, but we've done it anyway. And then there's the problem of access, of course, of the information. It's a problem in every country. There are more open countries than others. Chile is more open, Colombia more open, Peru is opening up. But it's the story of our lives as well. We're used to battling Congress in this case, or whatever other agency we have to fight against. And the problem, I would say, the philosophical problem of not being heard as well. The advocacy movement that we undertake in every country, and how Congresses effectively respond to what we're asking or not, and if we in the end create a more symmetrical relationship, and that's the thing of being here, the partnership thing, how to create a relationship where they're not the evil part of the story, and we're not the terrorists either, and so how to collaborate with both.
I didn't know we had any terrorists on the panel. Paul?
As we're a small charity, unsurprisingly, I'm always going to say that we can do more with more money. But even if we had all the money in the world, we still couldn't do everything that we wanted. Even if we had all the money and all the people, we would still not be able to do everything we wanted simply because we can't get the information. And one very quick example is we would love to publish on Muzalendo the voting records of the Kenyan Parliament, but we can't get hold of the data, so we can't publish that information.
Yeah. One of the most wonderful stories I've heard in the last 2 days is taking photos of people voting, like you have your hands up right now in the Tunisian parliament, taking photos and then manually going through, working out who did what, and then reporting it. It's a labour of love and it's brilliant. Okay, we're going to take 3 more. The gentleman over there who's had his hand up for ages. I'm looking for someone who's a lady of some kind. Have we got anyone at all? No, we don't, but let's at least go for the far left over here, him, and then right in the middle for a variety, next to the lady with blonde hair. So, right, okay. Maybe the lady with blonde hair could ask a question. Right, let's go.
Okay, hello, my name is Ayub Mzee. I'm also the director of New Deal Africa. Part of what we do is that we try and put the diaspora together in terms of getting involved in British politics. My question is specifically directed towards Mr. Abbott. We are finding quite a lot of problems trying to gate the diaspora engaged in parliamentary democracy, even though we have got support from some members of parliament, our main issue has been funding. Do you know where you think, any direction that you can point and say this is where you can get funding and source of information as well? Because as you know, statistics show here in the UK that out of 10 black people in Britain, 8 are not registered, they're not on the voters register. So that's what we are trying to do, to get people registered to vote and get involved in in democracy. Thank you.
And then over on the far left here.
Great. Scott Hubley with NDI and this new legislative openness working group that was launched yesterday. Just first of all, congratulations on all the great work. We support openparliament.org, which tries to share some of these great stories because it's just incredible work that that groups such as yourself are doing around the world. Our hope is with this working group, we can address some of the issues, the scraping complaint that comes up and not getting access to the raw underlying data, but just a call to kind of participate also in the working group. If there are any things that you can advance through that platform, we want to be supportive. And I guess a question of just, in addition to perhaps the scraping and access to data issue, any other priorities that you would like to see addressed through this working group process?
Okay, and then there was a gentleman in the middle.
Hello, Frank from FAO, but as a citizen here. Well, the more information's out there, the better. But how do you get to grips with simplifying the information without making simple and even wrong? I mean, our parliamentarians in Europe, they talk about the European Stability Financial Facility, or whatever it's called, that they don't understand themselves. So how can you communicate it? How can you not put parliamentarians in boxes which is unjustified? Like Maria, in one of your websites, you had this parliamentarian voted against climate change, but the votes are much more complex that you can really simplify to that statement. Or you, Matthew, you had what happens in my street thing, this building, a new facade. That's straightforward, but if there's, I don't know, a nuclear waste facility getting to be built, the direction will be very different and maybe no longer at the capacity of everyone to really provide a comment that's useful. So how do you get to grips with these things?
Okay, so a quick reminder of those three. The first one was essentially around the role of these services in engaging people in politics and getting them to want to register to vote and that sort of thing. The second one was about what priorities there's going to be there is an active working group that is essentially a way of lobbying parliaments to do stuff better. What should that working group be working on lobbying for? And the third one is how on earth do you make this stuff simple without distorting it and basically telling people things that aren't true. Open to the floor.
Should we do it in the same order? Okay.
Maybe quicker this time.
All right. I'll start at the end. I think the simple thing is if you end up simplifying the information in any way, you use the power of the internet, which is the link, to give people references. So if people want to dig deeper, they can. Wherever we collect information that we get from somewhere else, we link to that information. So in the case of the development application, you can find the original thing, you can find out more information. The important thing is not to treat people like idiots, because they're not. In terms of getting people involved in the political system, I think it's really powerful to appeal to people's personal interests as a sort of gateway. And I think it's about creating places where people can discover things and then giving them the tools to do the next thing and go to the next stage. And in the case of being disenfranchised, it's about just finding some way of being interested in politics and then giving people a simple means by which to do the next step. So all the things that are required to do that are more and more information, and I think it's a tip of the iceberg right now, and we really need to round out what we have available, and in such a way that it isn't incredibly difficult to get to, and I think we have every piece of information that we collect right now is a labor of love and is painful to get to. It would just be nicer if each one was a little bit easier, and then there would be more of it, and we'd paint a more complete picture.
So in terms of simplifying information from our point of view, we do a lot of work we have different information offices for the House of Commons and House of Lords who do a lot of great work around outreach where people go out to explain what Parliament does. We have a huge amount of information about what Parliament is. Just people have really basic questions about what is Parliament, what does an MP do. So we produce a lot of that information on our site. We do news articles which, as Matthew said, they basically just boil down what's happening in a day to a bunch of links that will take you off to the bigger, the full bills or the full debates that happen, to trying to make sense of what's happening in Parliament. But there's a lot more that we can keep doing, because there's initiatives in the UK like the Good Law initiative that some of the people here might have heard about, which is pushing to make laws, to make bills more understandable from the very get-go, from the start. You try and write them in a way that someone anywhere can understand. So there's some interesting work we could do around that. It's at the moment, a lot of those things are done quite manually. There's possibly ways you could look in the future, just simplifying some of that information and just making it more useful. In terms of people being disenfranchised, I think we focus on the Parliament's website. We're mainly focusing on making sure we can make the information available in ways that people want to find. I know there's a lot of government initiatives in this country that are working really hard to try and get more people signed up, but it is something that we concern ourselves with. We're concerned that if people don't know what's going on in Parliament, then every 4 years they're just asked who do you want to vote for? They don't know, and we need to get better at that. But it might be useful. I could come and talk to you afterwards if that would be helpful.
It's an interesting question about the comments that ordinary people may do to legislation. We always have that debate in our organization. We always say, what's the use of, like, my own mother commenting on a nuclear weapon text, and in the answer we come up with always is, you need her, my mother, it's a housewife, to comment and get involved. And you also need, like, the more technical organizations that can really do some interesting and valuable comments to our law. But you need both, because she needs to get involved in the system, whether you like it or not. She can agree or disagree with something, even if she doesn't know much what that is really. And you need the technical knowledge of the people that live in the society that the Congress or this Congress is in, and they have a lot of things to say about a text. In many of our societies in Latin America, those people, those technical, the ones that own the technical knowledge, don't get involved, and that is a very big problem. And so, just to make it short, I think the answer is you need both. And the other question?
We should keep going just for time.
So, relatively quickly, on the question of simplification and independence, it's a problem that we wrestle with in the UK, particularly on They Work For You, because we have those things under each politician saying, this person voted against climate change legislation, or they voted for the fox hunting ban. And the way we get that information and condense it like that is by having independent researchers go through the votes and collate it and assign what a vote means in terms of the context of the bigger issue. We are very careful to drill down and have it so they can see the detail behind the votes and the individual bills. But to the points that have been made by my peers on the panel, you can look at a bill and have no idea what it means, even if you're really, fairly politically savvy. You don't know really what it means in terms of the outcome of legislation. And the second point was around engagement. And I think, for me, it is making people understand that politics isn't this thing that comes around once every 5 years. Politics is why your child doesn't have the up-to-date textbooks in the schoolroom. Politics is why there are holes in your road. Politics is why you think the healthcare system is broken. And the challenge on all of us is to make people realise those day-to-day issues that impact their lives relate to politics, and then showing to them how they can take action within the political system to change it.
Okay, I'm going to take two last questions because we're running out of time. There's a very enthusiastic-looking man here, and the gentleman right in the middle of the front here. So just these last two, and then quick questions, quick answers, please.
Hi, thanks, Tom. My name's Alistair Stoddart. I'm from the Democratic Society, based here in the UK. All the data that's accessible is fantastic. All the examples are brilliant. But the real question that we need to, ask and answer is: how do we get citizens? How do we get the people out there to engage and use the information? Because you can have all the information in the world, but in touching on what Paul was just mentioning, how do we actually get them to engage with that and get them back into democracy and the political process? That's the key question that we need to ask.
Okay. Pretty easy. So just here, it's coming. There you go.
Thank you very much. My name is Mwansa Kapea. I'm a member of parliament from Zambia in Africa. Mine is not a question as such, but just a contribution to what our wonderful colleagues have presented about the openness of government. In my country, Parliament of Zambia has really opened up to its people. 4 years ago, it had established parliamentary offices in all the 150 constituencies with libraries, where people in different constituencies go to those offices and get to learn about their parliament. And these offices are doing very well in our country as parliamentary offices. Furthermore, the parliament in Zambia has established a radio station where, when parliament is in business, in session, or what is the debates going on in parliament are being captured by all the people of Zambia through the radio station. Again, with the coming in of digital migration, once the digital migration is completed by the end of next year, Parliament will have its own channel on television and will be televising whatever business will be going on in the Zambian Parliament. So I must admit that my Parliament has gone a step further in opening up to the people of Zambia. Thank you.
Do you want to come quickly down from the other direction?
So again, it's kind of to reiterate the point that if you tell people that it's all about open data and it's about parliamentary information, then they're not going to be interested. All of those things are vital, but they're the fuel in the tank. What you need to be doing, as I made in the earlier point, is actually identifying the issues that are critical in people's lives and making people understand that they have the power and the opportunity to take action.
Yeah, I agree totally. We say in Spanish we call it soft and hard transparency. Soft is like through issues, through discussing our environmental issues, you skip or you add in like transparency issues. If you go through transparency directly, people won't hop in the message, we feel.
From our point of view, I think we have a huge amount of information, but we need to focus on the utility for people who are using it. So if you want to come, They Work For You website was kind of forwards the path in this area, but people don't engage with, I want to read the entire debate that happened yesterday down to what a couple of people will. Mainly people want to know, what is Parliament doing about this topic that I care about? What is this person at Parliament doing about this? Or what has been debated around this topic? And so I think we can be a lot better at taking information and just saying there's something important that you should read or you should know about.
I don't have any kind of idea about the long term, but in the medium term, I would say there's definitely been a political shift towards more issues-based politics, away from sort of party politics, and I think that's reflected in how people engage with politics generally. So I'd say people are more likely to engage through issues and their interests, and that is the route into to get more people involved.
Thank you. There's been an amazing vibe in this room, and for those of you who maybe are coming to this new and who don't know, there is a fantastic email list that was set up by the NDI called the PMO network. It turned out to be impossible to Google for this thing. It's really hard. I was just trying. So instead, if you look on Twitter for mySociety, we will put a link out to it. But the PMO network email list, if this was exciting to you or interesting, please join it. It's absolutely fantastic. The NDI did a great job in kicking it off, and if these debates will carry on that list for a long time, and it's fantastic that they have a good home. So thank you for coming. Thank you to the panelists. I think it's lunchtime. Thank you.